Hey everybody, welcome back to the Coming of Cage podcast, your Nicolas Cage movie review podcast. I am Derek, one of your two hosts, and Ryan, your other host, is right here.
That's right, right next to him.
Right next to me, virtually anyway.
That's right, in Zoom.
In Zoom land. We are just, talking Nicolas Cage movies. It's what we do. We spin our wheel o' cage and it tells us which Nicolas Cage movie we talk about. And this week's episode is about the 2019 action crime drama, A Score to Settle, starring Nicolas Cage and Benjamin Bratt. Those are the two kind of big names, along with Noah Gros, Carolina Widra, and Mohammed Karim. Those are kind of the main players in the movie. This is episode 49 of the show.
That's right. Edging up towards that 50.
We're getting there. We're getting there. So A Score to Settle is about a ex-enforcer for a local crime syndicate has vowed to enact retribution on his mob bosses after 19 years of wrongful imprisonment. The only thing diverting his violent plans is his newfound relationship to his beloved son, whatever. So that's the movie. That's what it is. Ryan, you want to tell people what we do next?
Yeah, I take notes during the movie, and we kind of go through them in the chronological order. Although sometimes Derek does argue with me about whether it's actually chronological or not, even though I'm literally writing them as I'm watching the movie, so there's no way they're not chronological.
They're a little vague sometimes.
Sometimes they're vague enough that we mistake one thing for another thing, and it happens. What are you gonna do? But yeah, A Score to Settle. Should we start it out? Get going?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's kick this off.
Okay, right out of the gate, we had 6 different production company intros in this movie,
including Saturn, which is Nick's company.
Sure, but normally, I mean, we're used to seeing a good amount of them in these Nick Cage smaller movies, but 6 has got to be close to a record. I mean, that was a lot. We were literally counting and we were like 1, 2, like out loud, because it was ridiculous how many there were.
Well, I have a pet peeve about how every production company has to have its own animated logo intro, but then once the movie starts, they still get a credit.
Yeah, exactly.
It's it's so annoying.
The first 7 minutes of the movie is just seeing credits for the production companies, basically.
Which I believe Nick was actually an executive producer individually as well.
Yeah.
So he was very involved in this one.
He really believed in this one. It's funny that when you read the description of the movie that it said an ex-enforcer, because that's really never established in the movie what he did for the
you don't think so?
Criminal? No, I mean, we get a short scene at the beginning that shows some stuff, but it looks like he's just a baseball enthusiast.
Really? That's your takeaway?
Yeah, it was okay. So so basically the beginning of the movie opens with this young guy, and when I saw this young guy, I was like, I wonder if that's supposed to be a young Nick Cage, because I can kind of see the resemblance.
Do you know who that is?
No.
That is Bailey Coppola.
Oh, is it? Okay.
That is Nick's nephew.
Okay.
Yeah. Which is cool. I think that's cool.
It was a pretty cool, I mean, you could tell it wasn't Nick, but a young Nick, but it was pretty close. I was surprised because I think this is the first movie we've reviewed where we've seen a younger adult Nick in a movie where Nick is also playing an older version of that adult, and he's doing it with a younger actor.
With the exception of Unbearable Weight, where they just de-aged him to play Nicky.
Right, but I mean it's separate actor. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So the movie essentially, after the 6 different production intros, starts with we see an old man playing baseball, and then we see the guy that looks like the young Nicolas Cage hitting or giving him tips, when you're playing Little League and you have your coach telling you to follow through and make sure all the power comes from the front hip or whatever, all that kind of stuff. And so he tries to do it again and misses, and he's getting frustrated, and it cuts over and you see this guy who we have no idea what he did, because it is what it is. It's not relevant to the movie really, but they're hitting baseballs at this guy to kind of torture him, essentially. It
Which,
seems like they're not trying to kill him. They're just trying to like beat the shit out of him.
at least for now, but it just seems like a really inefficient way
Right.
to
It's
do
the
it,
least efficient way to do it because you might not hit him at all. It might take you days to hit him if you're not a baseball player.
right?
You know, it's a small target. I mean, he's sitting on a chair or a stump or something, and he's just like tied up. So it's not like a full size standing human being.
It
Um,
seems like a weird way to do that, but
right.
baseball's a little theme that goes through the rest of the movie. So
Well, baseball bats are a theme that kind of goes through the rest of the movie. But yeah, so he keeps taking swings, and one of the times the ball like rolls out of this little area that they've made for this to happen, and so young Nicolas Cage goes out to try and find the ball with somebody else, and he
I
comes
think that's
back.
supposed to be young Benjamin Bratt's
Oh,
character.
okay,
I
probably.
think.
He comes back, and the guy is beating the to death the guy that was tied up with the baseball bat, and
Mhm.
one of the other guys that was there that was giving him shit earlier is laughing about it, and it seems like he encouraged this to happen. Um, but yeah, I didn't really get enforcer vibes from him. I mean, clearly he's a criminal, that handles business, but I didn't necessarily get enforcer vibes. It wasn't like Kiss of Death, where you could tell he's clearly like the guy that enforces. He wasn't.
Yeah, I
Maybe
guess
he should have been wearing a white tank top.
yeah, I mean, that would have helped. I think it's
Yeah.
just kind of throughout the movie, they keep talking about how, like, you get the orders and you just do what the boss says, orders
Right,
are
but that's
orders. And,
criminals. That's just criminals in general. That's not
well, I mean,
enforcer
t-
specific.
but like typically, like, that's those guys there, they go out and they beat the dude up, and that's what the enforcers
Okay.
do.
I mean, yeah, but they don't tell him to go beat somebody up. They just say you do what the boss tells you to do, which is just general criminal stuff. It is what it is. I'm not going to get into the weeds on it. We've had different takes, but yeah. So yeah, then it cuts to like a older Nick Cage. He takes the rap essentially because we cut to an older Nick Cage who is just now getting out of prison for these taking the rap for this crime. And so yeah, my next note was that was supposed to be a young Nick Cage because at the time I wasn't sure. I
Hmm.
know it looked like him, but yeah, so that was confirmed at that point. And at this point in the movie, I don't know if you noticed this. It became a theme throughout the movie for me, but really bad ADR.
Really,
You didn't notice that? Man, I feel like
I
we have
didn't.
this discussion we've had this on several movies where I noticed it like it was so obvious to me, and then you didn't notice it at all. But
No, I mean, maybe it has something to do with our setups. I don't know.
maybe, but there's there was a lot of scenes where a lot of the places where they do ADR is when somebody's not facing the camera, so you can't really see their mouth move, and
Hmm.
you can put whatever you want in there. And there was a lot of scenes like that where the person wasn't facing the camera, and like the voice was, you could still see the jaw moving, but the voice didn't match up, or the voice was like, they're facing away from the camera, but the voice is still super clear and just as loud as everybody else in the scene, when it should be a little different because there are different distances between people,
Hmm.
and things like that. So yeah, that was throughout the movie that bothered me. I noticed it especially bad on his older son. It was really bad.
Interesting.
They had to re-record a lot of lines for him.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, he gets released from prison, and then we get a really bad green screen. Did you see that when he's walking out of the prison? He's like standing in front of it.
Well, yes. So I do want to point out. So they say that the reason he's being released is important. It's kind of the crux of the film here. So he's being released because he's ill. He's dying. He has what's
Yeah,
called sporadic fatal insomnia, or SFI, which is actually real. This is a real thing. It causes cognitive issues and sleep disturbances that rapidly worsen over a few months or years, leading to coma and death.
yeah. Which they say all that in the movie essentially.
And it's real. I wasn't sure it was real.
Derek,
So
you
I,
also have insomnia. Did you notice did you agree with the way it was portrayed in this movie?
I mean, yeah, I don't know. I mean, my insomnia has always been that I struggle to stay asleep, so I just wake up a lot.
Oh, okay.
Um, I don't go like sleepless nights. When I was maybe a teenager, it was like that, but now it's more of just I fall asleep and I'm up every like hour and a half or 2 hours, you
Gotcha.
know. So it's a little different, but
Yeah, so he gets out of jail because of that, and we get this scene of him walking out of the prison, and it's really bad. I mean, if you are a fan of like pop culture stuff and you've seen The Office, and there's this one green screen moment in that whole series that's really like shit on by the entire internet because it's so bad, and this looked equally as bad to that as that moment. I mean, it was really terrible.
yeah, they clearly didn't get an actual prison to shoot at.
Right,
Um,
especially not to shoot outside of, yeah.
yeah, and I also thought it was weird that they released him in the middle of the night. I don't know if that's
Mm.
normal or not,
Yeah, the
but
person I watched it with commented on that too. They thought that was kind of odd.
okay. Yeah, I thought that was weird.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really catch it in the moment, yeah, but when it was brought up, it was more like, yeah, that is kind of weird. But I guess I think my response to that was maybe it's like really early in the morning. So I
Yeah,
mean,
I
we don't
mean,
really know. It was just dark out. That's all we really know. So
right. No, that's fair. I guess the way it's always been portrayed in movies before this was like, there's like a cab waiting for them, or something like
maybe it was in
that. So,
Alaska where there's only an hour of daylight every day. Yeah. So then he leaves the prison and he starts walking up the road and he sees in the distance someone walking towards him,
hmm
and they get closer and he realizes that it's his son
hmm
who had to sell his car to take care of some stuff apparently, and so he's just walking. um and within like 5 minutes I could just see that I was not going to like this kid's acting. And when I say kid, he's like 19, because I think uh Nick Cage's character was in jail for like 20 years or something.
Yeah,
uh
and so this is Noah LaGrosse. He was born in 1999, so he was 20 when the movie came out. So he was definitely 19 during filming. And he's also in The Old Way, which was one of Nicolas Cage's 2023 films. So we will see him again.
I hope he's better, because in this movie I wasn't buying it. I don't know how you felt about it. It just, I thought he was bad, just pretty much
I
throughout the whole
was
thing.
not a fan or
Yeah,
anything. And look, he hasn't had like a huge career. He started acting in 2016. He's only been in 10 total things over his career. Um, the biggest thing probably being The Old Way.
right. Which wasn't
So,
exactly a blockbuster. So,
right.
so yeah, the kid and him are walking and talking about stuff, and it's clear that, or they established that the kid never visited his dad in prison, and that he kind of has some resentment towards him. But eventually they get in a cab,
hmm
and the whole cab ride is a weird timetable that we'll get into, but they make a stop. He has to stop at his old house or somebody's old house. I don't know,
It's his old house. Yeah.
his old house. And so he stops there. The cab stops there, and they wait outside. And he goes on like a hike. First of all, somebody's living in this house, and so he waits for this person to get away from the window so that he can sneak by into the woods of this property. And he goes on a full. He steals one of their shovels. First of all, that's out front, and he goes on a full on hike. I mean, we see him trudging through the woods, and he seemed to have gone a while. It's a
hmm
big property, and he gets to like this tree house in the woods, or not a tree house, more like a
It's like a shack.
clubhouse. Yeah, like
Yeah.
a little shack. Seems like maybe made for a kid. Um, but yeah, he goes through and finds some like cars and stuff, and then he finds a baseball card that's probably worth a lot of money, but he knows it was his son's, and so he's gonna bring it to him. But then he goes and digs up a duffel bag. Or no, digs up like a suitcase, and then
Yeah.
he puts all the stuff from the suitcase into the duffel bag, and
And
he
it's just a
literally
ton of
carries,
cash.
yeah, and some bats, and
Well, he
he
had the bats already.
okay, well, either
Yeah.
way, yeah, he in this duffel bag he carries in every single scene in the entire movie, basically, just carrying all this cash around. But yeah, he picks up all this cash, and so they they show like a lot with this taxi that they're riding in. They show a lot of like sweeping scenery with the taxi driving through. And it
Mhm.
seems like they're driving real. Did it seem like that to you? They were driving. They went really far in this taxi.
Well, they say it's a $300 taxi ride.
Right. I would think that it was. I thought they were driving for hours, and maybe I just don't know how much taxis cost. But $300 seems like a pretty good deal for like what seemed to be hundreds of miles.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I don't really have a great frame of reference. I mean, we're in Kansas City. We don't really do cabs
Yeah,
out
we don't do
here. So,
cabs. We don't have public transportation. It's just a really great setup.
yeah, so I don't
Um,
know. I mean, I've only
it
ever been in a cab like in Manhattan, New York, which is not the real world. So
it struck me as a little weird. I expected the bill to be like $1,000 because they made it seem like they were driving night and day and crossing the country. But
that's fair.
um,
That's fair.
yeah, so when he gets back into the cab, he shows his son this card, and his son is like, "Oh, I bet I can sell this for some good money." And he's like, "No, please don't do that. I'll buy it from you." And the kid's like, "Okay,
Sentimental.
whatever." Yeah,
Obviously, Frank, Nick Cage's character, Frankie, he's got some, some issues about everything that's happened. He has a lot of guilt about leaving his son behind because his wife is dead. She died before he went into prison.
yeah.
So the son, Joey, was basically abandoned when Frank went into prison. I think, that whole guilt eats him away throughout the movie.
Yeah, and he knows that his son has had some like drug addiction issues and things like that.
Hmm.
And that the when he went to jail, that the crime family that he worked for or whatever was supposed to be taking care of his son, and they clearly didn't do a great job because he like got into a bunch of addiction and things like that. So
Exactly.
um yeah. So then they go to this hotel, which was apparently a special hotel that he had spent some time with his wife in, like their honeymoon or something like that. They
Yeah, it was some gorgeous like chateau
Right.
crazy thing.
And they don't just get a room there. I mean, they get like the presidential suite. And
Yeah,
he's
yeah.
literally just like handing people wads of cash as a tip. I mean, he's just slinging this money like nobody's business.
I mean, we learned that he had about 450 grand. And so yeah, he is
Right.
just spending to spend. Almost like a
Right.
guy who might be dying.
Right. And he has we this is where we find out about the baseball bats. Not
Right.
like we saw him take one from that suitcase that he found. But
Oh, right, right.
but
The
but
one that was used in the murder in the beginning
right,
of the movie.
it's all bloody and old looking. But while he's like pulling out the money to stack it up in the hotel room, you see like four or five baseball bats in there,
Mhm.
and well, including the bloody one, but most of them look like pretty fresh, brand new baseball bats, all wood. And he goes through this thing with his son talking about these bats and how he hand carved them.
And I
um
was wondering about that because so they're in the bag that when he gets his personal effects when he leaves the
yeah,
prison. Did he make those in prison?
he was just carrying them when he went to prison, apparently.
He just had like four baseball bats on him.
Yeah, and the murder happened with a baseball bat, so that it made it incredibly obvious who did it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so
So I was curious about that.
him and his son have a heart to heart, and it's their first night. Like they're going to bed, and like the son is constantly like trying to walk away, and he's walking. The dad is walking a thin edge,
Right.
basically, and any way the breeze blows is going to make the kid want to leave.
At this point,
So
it kind of feels like Joey's around because he's broke. He doesn't really want to be there.
he also seems like he's still struggling with addiction, even
Yeah.
though he says he's not. But his physical look, as well as the way he acts, are very typical of an addict. And so at least as a viewer, I had some suspicions that maybe that was still going on, and it seemed like Nick Cage's character, had similar thoughts as well.
Mhm.
Um, so his son goes to sleep, and since he's an insomniac, he does not sleep. In fact, he decides to go out and buy guns.
Now, real quick, I think it's important that he's promised his son that he is not out for revenge, that his old life is done. He's done with those people, and he
And
wants
he's
to.
just trying to repair the relationship with his son, yeah, and be a good
And
dad.
within like 20 minutes, immediately,
Yeah,
he
as soon as
goes
the son goes to
against.
sleep, he sneaks out to go buy guns. He
Oh my
meets up with
God.
some of like his old contacts. Um, and yeah, buys like a Uzi or some sort of like small submachine gun and a pistol and a
Hmm.
silencer.
Something Italian.
A suppressor. I'm sorry, not a silencer.
Right.
Um,
And
and
it's kind of a sad scene because we learned this woman who's like doing the gun stuff. She like basically inherited her father's business because that's
yeah,
who he was looking for. I think the guy's name was Sleepy, I think.
sleepy.
And
Yep.
he's been dead for years or something like that. And his daughter now inherited it, and she now has a son who's like around all of this stuff. And it's just kind of sad that like it's just this family propagating a really dangerous, violent life generation after generation. It bummed me out.
Yeah, it was a little depressing. Um, is this the place where he gives the kid the bat? Oh yes, yeah. So the while they're doing this
Yeah.
gun deal, and it's like in the middle of the night. Keep in mind, this like 8-year-old kid peeks his head out to see what mommy's doing, and they're doing like this highly illegal arms deal. And Frankie sees the kid, and he's like, "Hey kid, how you doing?" And he gives him this like baseball bat, one of like the 5 baseball bats that he has in his duffel bag that he brings everywhere.
Yeah.
Um, it was weird.
It
Um,
was weird.
so then he goes to visit
Mm.
Benjamin Bratt's character, Q,
You.
who
Always a good name.
seems like he's out of the game. He's just running this bar now, and he's got a daughter that's getting married, and seemingly out. And Nick Cage's character wants to know where these guys are that convinced this crime boss guy to kill the dude that got him put in jail that he took the rap for. So yeah, just for the people that play bingo with us, on when he gave the kid a bat, we had some questions as to whether you considered that befriending a minor or not.
That's interesting. That
That
is
is
interesting.
a bingo slot. We can talk
It
about
is a
that
bingo
more when
slot.
we can talk about
Yeah.
that more when we get to the Keijo bingo. If you want to just think about it during that
I'll
time, we
think
don't need to
about
go
it.
on.
I had not
Um,
considered it, but I will think about it.
Also, when he goes to visit Benjamin Bratt's character, he has some alcohol, which is another square on our bingo card. So,
Yes.
um, and Q is not giving him the answers that he wants, so he ends up pulling the one of the guns he just bought on his old friend,
Hmm.
who kind of talks him out of it, and, stays calm and just kind of tells him that he's out of it, and he really doesn't know where these people are at.
Well, and he
And
also mentions that Max, so the guy who led the gang, Max, has been dead for 6 years. Right. So basically, what we gather through the first parts of this
Max
movie
is
is
the
that
guy that beats the guy to death with the bat, right?
right.
Yeah,
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And so he's the older dude in the beginning. So at this point, we realize like two people were responsible for basically turning in Frank, plus the boss gave the order. So Frank is out for these three guys,
right.
is kind of the idea.
Yeah. And around this time, we get our first KG moment where we get because of this insomnia, he has like these breakdowns where he starts like
Mm.
seeing things and hearing things and having like flashbacks. And yeah, there's some pretty high Cage moments in this movie, mostly related to those breakdowns, but towards the end, not as much about the breakdown, just like more of his character dying. But um yeah, so we get kind of the first of those breakdowns, and his Q is there to see the end of it, I think, and asks him what's going on and blah blah blah. So people know that he's unraveling a bit, but he isn't telling anybody about this insomnia thing.
Right. Nobody knows that he's dying. They can kind of
Right.
gather he's not all okay. And we also find out that Q's daughter is getting married in 3 days,
Right.
which, is
I
relevant.
I did mention that his daughter's
Do,
getting married. Yeah, I mentioned
you
that
did? I'm
earlier.
sorry. I'm
It's
sorry.
okay. But yeah, so he sneaks back into his hotel room, and he's like, "Hey, son, are you up,
But it's
son?
like
Son?"
broad daylight at this
Yeah,
point. He's been
it
gone
had to
all
be like
night.
9 o'clock or 10 o'clock in the morning or something. But yeah, he gets with his son, and they're gonna go out shopping because he promised to buy him some clothes.
Right. Yeah. Because he doesn't
Uh,
have any
because he doesn't have
with
any
him.
clothes. He just has one
Yeah.
outfit. So they go out and go to the mall or something, and he buys like some watches, a couple of watch matching like father son watches that
Hmm.
were implied to be really expensive. It didn't really show the watches,
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't tell what they were
but
from.
yeah, it seemed like they might be expensive. Um, and he calls his son sexy.
Yeah, so they're trying on like suits, right? Like they're
Yeah,
getting like custom tailored suits or whatever. And yeah, there are some scenes.
there's a weird dynamic between the two of them that feels more like me and Derek hanging out rather than like a father and a son,
Yes, I agree.
especially
It
an
was
estranged father and son.
right. It felt a little weird at times. Throughout the movie. There were multiple. This was like really the first one that made me like, what?
Yeah,
What
when he
what
called him
did he just say?
sexy, I was like, what? This is, yeah, really uncomfortable.
It was
So
weird.
yeah, so he buys them a suit or maybe multiple suits. I don't know. They've got bags of stuff and the
Right.
watches,
A phone. He gets
a
Frank
phone,
gets his
and then
first
he buys them a
smartphone.
car. He's like, you don't have a car, so we're just gonna go to this GM dealership and get a brand new Corvette.
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
Expensive with
brand deal,
cash.
brand deal
With
with
cash.
GM there.
That's right. That's right.
Um,
And of course, Nick got to show off some of his driving skills because it's all
well,
him.
not really. I mean, he got to do
There's
donuts in a
donuts.
parking
Yeah.
lot. Like that
No,
doesn't take skill, especially in a
but they were
Corvette.
letting him actually do it, I guess
They
is my point.
were,
You know.
yeah. It
They've
was
got
funny.
these there's a lipstick camera that they keep cutting to and his face just looks so
Oh yeah,
ridiculous.
he looks like he's having fun. But
He's
yeah,
having a good time.
I put KG car driving
Yes.
because he was definitely channeling some pure Cage joy in those moments.
I think
Um,
he liked that day of shooting, I think, quite a bit.
yeah, that was probably what got him on board. But yeah, so they go and they get done doing donuts and stuff, and they're going they go and like get some food, and they're like leaned up
Yeah.
against this Corvette eating food in their brand new suits and watches, and like this guy walks up to him and tells him that his job is to like get him women or something, like he's a pimp.
Yeah, Trip.
Yeah, trip.
Yeah.
And here's my card. And the kid, this is probably the second moment you're thinking about when the kid is like trying really hard to get his dad to fuck somebody.
Which like like the mom's been dead for a long time. So let's not pretend that
And
like
he's
this
been
just
in jail
happened
for
or
20
whatever.
years.
So like to an extent I understand, but it's still weird for a son to try and get his dad laid. And this isn't the only scene where that happens, and it's just very strange
And
for
look,
me.
I don't find that bit necessarily weird. Like, I get it. We're when you are an adult and you have an adult, you're an adult kid and you have an adult dad. We all understand that people do these things, and
Sure.
you want your dad to be happy. So sure, I mean, I can see like mentioning it offhand that why don't you go try and date again or something. But this kid is like making really lewd comments about it.
Well, right. It's not that he wants his dad to like get back out there and date. He wants his dad to like go get a prostitute right now.
Yeah, he wants him to dump some
Right.
loads
Like
right
it's
then. Yeah.
yeah, like it's that that's kind of weird. And I don't know, maybe it's just like I don't know. Maybe it's just for me it's weird, but I thought it was weird.
Yeah. He wanted his dad to get the poison out. It happens. He's been in prison for 20 years. Anyway, when they're joking about stuff, at one point the kid says, I have a quote.
Oh.
It's like falling off a bike into a vagina. That was a line that somebody got paid to write for this movie.
I mean, we don't know that. That could have been improv. We don't know.
That was not, I can guarantee you that kid did not improv that.
I'm
There's no
just saying
way.
we don't know.
I know. So they see that I right like with this bike line.
Yeah.
So they're in the hotel, like not far from their room, and they see this woman like down the hall a little bit.
They had seen her the night before at dinner and they had talked about how she was a prostitute.
Right.
Because Frank, I guess, is naive to those things, which I mean, yes, he's been in prison for 19 years, but prostitution existed prior to that. So, and he was in like a gang and stuff. So I find that a little hard to believe,
Yeah, I
but
mean, that's literally called the world's oldest profession. So, I mean,
it's
but yeah,
weird that like his 19-year-old kid has to teach him like what a prostitute is about. That seems
right.
odd to me.
But they see her in the hotel, and she's just like down there. It's funny because you can tell the stage direction was something like, they're going to just talk over here for like 10 minutes and we need you to just kind of mill around doing things and making it seem like you're doing things while
Right.
they have this really lewd discussion about what he needs to do to you. And
Yeah,
so
it's
they have
man.
this horrible discussion where they have that make that comment about the bike, and she is at the end of a hall. There's nothing, there's like a flower pot and like a bench and a rail, and so between those three things she has to make it seem like her character is doing something there.
Which I mean,
Like she adjusts her shoes and like
she
leans on
checks
the
her
rail for a
phone.
second, checks on her phone. Yeah, it's just, it was, I felt so bad for that
Yeah,
actress that she had to like, anyway, yeah. So he eventually goes up to her and she's like, sure, let's do it. And so then it cuts to a Nick Cage sex scene and they're finishing up, I guess, at this point. She's on top,
mhm.
as they always are in these Nick Cage sex scenes, if you'll notice. Maybe that needs to be a Bingo Card 2 sex scene with woman on top. Because it
We'll get more
literally
specific.
every time,
I'll replace that the unenthusiastic sex with this one. I'll
yeah, it
swap
can
that
be
out.
it can be interchanged, I guess, from time to time. But yeah, literally, can you think of any of the sex scenes that we've seen in the Nick Cage in these like, movies where the woman is not on top?
I don't think so.
On Zondali, there was one where she started on
Well,
top, but then he flipped her over.
I mean, there's so much of that in
Yeah,
Zondali. I
that's
guess it was
true.
bound to happen, but
But yeah, literally 90% of the sex scenes, he's just laying on the bottom while the woman does everything. And it's especially funny in this one because as they finish, she's like, "Oh, you're so good," and he's done nothing this whole time. He's been starfishing or whatever they call it, like just
I mean, in his
he's just been laying
defense,
there.
he doesn't think he's all that great either. Just, so he's not
No,
being
but
cocky or
it was
anything.
just
No pun
funny.
intended.
It
But
was just funny.
yeah,
He didn't
she
even take
seems
it. He
really
didn't even
into
take
him.
his shirt off. I want to point out.
Well, now hang on. There's a
I
reason for
know,
that.
but it's just like they say is he didn't want her to see his tattoos and scars, right? But if
Well,
you
because
before
specifically
you
they're
get to
like,
that point,
yeah.
you just see him laying there being so good with his shirt not even taken off. So
Well, I mean, she was a prostitute, so he's hired her. It's not like it's a date or something like
right,
that. So she's trying to show him a good time, get his money's worth, right? She's obviously trying to just be good at her job.
right.
And he has like prison tattoos and he doesn't want to freak her out because one thing about his character is really, he's a very like, he's very concerned about how other people perceive him
Yeah,
throughout the movie. And he didn't want to freak her out. Right.
right.
Like he's obviously not a good person, right? He's done a lot of bad things,
But
but
he's
he's
not an
got like,
asshole at this point. Yeah.
right. Yeah.
So he goes to pay her, and she's like, she takes offense. Like she gets mad at him because he's trying to pay her, but he's
No,
like, could
it's
you stay a little longer?
she was trying to like have him open up and have it be a little bit more of an intimate, less businessy session. And he didn't want to talk about the prison stuff and what he like his life, his past life. And she got offended.
Even though, as you just mentioned, this is a transactional thing and not, but
Especially later, like she talks about how she tries to keep business and separate and stuff like that. So like it's not even her real name. Like she's going by Simone. We find out later her real name is Jennifer. This is Carolina Weidger's character. I mean, yeah, I mean it's certainly hypocritical of the character in the movie to take offense at that.
yeah. So he asks if she'll stay a little longer when he realizes that she's offended and he wants to spend more time with her. And he's an insomniac, so he literally has all night. But yeah, so and I want to point out at this point that he did buy this Corvette for his son. This was supposed to be a
Yes.
gift for his son. But they take off in the Corvette. And then we get this, maybe it stood out to me, maybe it didn't stand out to you. We get this really weird, like artsy shot of a scarf. She loses her scarf, right, when they drive off
Mhm.
in this Corvette, and it like flies through the, it was a very like American Beauty trash bag of the
Yeah.
scarf. And it's a long scene. It's like 12 seconds, which doesn't sound that long, but in a movie context, it's just a weird shot of the scarf like flying through the air.
The only thing I can think of is like they wanted an excuse for the end of the movie when he shows back up and they were like, we'll just have him return her scarf. I don't
But
know.
she does make a comment when it flies off. Oh no,
Yeah.
not my scarf, or something like that.
Yeah.
they didn't need like 12 uninterrupted seconds of the scarf like blowing in the breeze
I'm
to
with you. I don't know. It's not a long movie. It's only an hour and 43 minutes. So I don't know. Maybe they're just trying to pad it a bit.
maybe. But eventually they get to the point where they're fucking again. Big surprise. And it's in the driver's seat of the car where, guess what? Nick Cage is on the bottom. Uh, and they're doing it in the driver's seat, which I thought is weird. That's kind of an amateur move. If you've ever had car sex, you don't do it in the driver's seat. You do it in the passenger seat,
Unless
obviously.
you have a vet. That's the rule.
Apparently, yeah. But yeah, she's riding, and at one point it cuts to his view and he starts hallucinating his his dead wife,
His wife, yeah.
uh, as her. It's really creepy. But it's not the only time it happens in the movie, where he's picturing her as his wife. Yeah, it's a very weird scene.
I mean, the Frank character is a sad character, right?
Yeah.
This is a kind of a broken man who is nostalgic for times that are long gone and is just kind of this lost, broken person. It's a sad
Well,
freaking movie.
and in true broken person fashion, the first woman that shows him
Mhm.
any kind of kindness, he immediately falls in love with her.
Even though like she's literally a prostitute.
Yeah. And so I did put love interest 10 years younger, which is a
Yep.
box on our bingo card. Um,
I'm glad you
it's
said that because I kept going back and forth on whether or not that counted because he kept picturing her as his wife, and I can't find her age. So his wife is played by Ellie Young, and I can't find her age anywhere.
I
So
mean,
did
they look 10 years younger, so I'll go with that.
okay.
Um, so while they're sitting in the car, she sees like one of his scars,
Hmm.
and she pulls out some vitamin E, like lotion, and she says that it helps with scars, but he's had this scar for 20 years.
Yeah, it's from like a
And just
shotgun blast.
right, and she rubs it on there. It's like, I'm pretty sure one application of vitamin E 20 years after the injury happened is not really going to help the scar tissue all that much,
No, it's already healed. It's done.
but I think it was one of those things where it was like her showing kindness to him, and then him like getting hyper serious immediately.
Well, he's like, well, why would you have that? Your skin is perfect. She's like, exactly. It was like a
Yeah,
commercial for vitamin E.
that's true. And yeah, at this point, I put ADR as so distracting, but it was only distracting to me. It seems
Yeah,
like.
sorry, buddy.
It's fine. That's why we do this. You see things that are different than I see them, and so and then so yeah, he goes out and he's gonna kill one of these guys. He finds out the location of one of these guys that was responsible. The dragon is what the guy
Jimmy
they
the
call him.
Dragon,
Yeah, and so
who
he
for
finds
some
where this
reason
guy's at.
looks like a solid 15 years younger than everybody else from this group.
Yeah,
Did
he
you
looks
get
like he
that?
didn't age at all since he literally played the young and the old version of himself.
Yeah, like he's looking pretty good.
Yeah, but so he goes in, and of course the guy is banging two chicks at the same time, or getting ready to bang two
I
chicks at the
think
same
it's
time,
three.
or three,
I think it's
because that's what
three.
all criminals and gangsters do, I guess. But he literally packs up like the submachine gun that he bought with the suppressor on it, and he needs that because he's going to go kill one guy. I thought that was ridiculous. And he's like
Especially when he
carrying
bought the
this,
pistol.
yeah, he has a pistol, but he's carrying this huge fucking gun
Huge.
with a suppressor
Uh-huh.
through this business.
It's
I
a
mean,
nail salon out front that has like, an illegal massage place in the back,
yeah,
right?
it's
Yeah,
human
I'm with you.
trafficking probably, because that's what it notorious. But
I didn't even think about that. That makes it even worse. So
yeah,
there you
but so
go.
he goes back there and he's going to kill this guy. And so he goes in there and points the gun at this guy's sitting in a chair facing away from the door. And so
Mhm.
he points the gun at the back of the head, and all the women are like looking at him, and he's like, shh, like telling him to be quiet. And eventually the guy notices he's there.
Well, he
And Nick,
turns him around
yeah, he turns
in the
around.
chair.
And
Yeah,
Nick says this line. Do you know the line I'm getting ready to say?
I think so.
Bitches leave.
I laughed. It actually made
Again,
me laugh.
somebody got paid to write this line for this movie, okay?
Look, I'm not saying that there's no character that could deliver that line in a serious way. This was not the character to do that. I'm sorry,
No.
Frank.
I mean, because he's been very respectful of women in general since the beginning of this movie. So a huge turn of character in this moment.
Well, because like he's an older, quieter, unassuming, polite guy at this point, or up to this point, excuse me. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, we know that he did some bad stuff, but what we actually really haven't seen any of it, right? We
Right,
just saw him teaching baseball techniques to Max. We didn't see him actually hurt anybody,
right.
right? So like to us, he doesn't seem like a particularly offensive, violent person, even though we know he's done things. This is the
Yeah,
first kind of sign of it.
and we it's also this really raunchy, like unnecessarily sexual scene where like the guy stands up and he's like, now you see why they call me the dragon, and he like gestures at his penis
Yeah,
off
so is he
screen.
naked, I guess?
Yeah, he was just wearing a robe. And
Okay.
so yeah, he's like, all he can talk about is how huge his penis is that they call it the dragon. And at some point, of course, he distracts Nick Cage and starts running.
Well,
And
so this is important. He mentions that Max has been in a coma, not dead. He's been, like he's not actually dead. He had a stroke, right? And he's alive. And he realizes that Frank doesn't know that, and he makes like a surprised kind of reaction to distract Frank. That's so it is an important plot point, but then it creates chaos.
yeah, and then there's like a really terrible action scene, which I did think qualifies for bad action sequence. They get out like behind the nail salon, and it's just like this terrible old man fight.
It's a
Except
pretty, yeah.
one of them has a gun, and he does shoot it at some point, so that qualifies for our bingo card as well. But yeah, it was just a really terrible action scene, and the guy gets away, doesn't he?
Oh yeah, well yeah, he comes back later.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
spoiler
You got to
alert,
deal
but
with him
yeah,
later.
yeah.
Um, so yeah, we got shot at, shoots a gun and bad action scene for the bingo card on that one. And then you might have to remind me this one. I have make Mercury in quotes as code for sex.
Make Mercury.
Yeah, someone says something about making Mercury and it's supposed to be a code for sex. I don't
I
remember
I do not recall that.
what that was a reference to, but
Sorry.
it
Yeah.
was something. Oh, I think maybe his son asked him if he made Mercury or something like that the next
I
morning.
don't know what that means.
I don't
I don't
either.
know. I
Maybe we need to Google it and see if that's a real thing.
knock yourself
Um,
out.
I'm not going to. Well, incognito mode. Yeah, I think his son asks him if he made Mercury.
I mean, like that's the
Um,
thing, right? This is another example, though, of like their relationship is weird AF. Like it's just a kid and his dad talking to this. It's just not for me. Is very much not normal. I'm not saying that. I guess maybe other people had that. I don't know. Um, I
yeah,
don't know.
I googling it and I don't see anything. So it must have been trying to start something like
It's
you know,
so fetch.
yeah, fetch. That's what I was thinking. Yeah, they're trying to start a new saying and it didn't work. So then they have an argument, the dad and the son, the next morning because he finds the guns, I believe,
Yeah.
or the
Because
bat.
Nick,
One of
look,
those two.
Nick promised, or Frank promised that he was done and he was not getting revenge, right? So Joey stuck around for that reason,
Yeah,
right? And I think it's totally fair for Joey to be pissed. He lied immediately. Frank lied immediately.
yeah. So yeah, they get in an argument. And the son says he's leaving, and they. I think is this the point where he knocks the pills all over the floor?
I'm probably.
He got pills for his insomnia, but he doesn't seem to be taking them.
It's supposed to
Um,
help him sleep. The doctor's very much like you have to at least try to sleep. It's gonna kill you, yada yada yada. And he doesn't seem to care.
yeah, he also at this point in the movie doesn't really seem to regret what's happening. He's not trying to deny it with his son. I'm not talking not necessarily about the insomnia, but about the like getting revenge. At this point, he's very
Right.
open about it. He seems very like agitated towards his son. Um, it's a complete like shift from what he was before, trying to like suck up to his son and try and be better for his son.
Hmm.
Um, so they have the argument, and the son says he's going to leave, and then Frankie takes the car again, even though it's not his car. Apparently, he bought it for his son, but he takes the car again. And eventually, I guess it's probably the next night at this point when he gets to the butcher place.
Yeah, for Tank, I think is the guy's name.
Yeah, so he goes to this butcher shop and he's eating something at this point. We were trying to figure out what it was. We
Like a
know what it was. We know what it is. But at the beginning, when he first walks in there, he's like taking a big bite off some stick looking thing. And I thought it was like beef jerky. We couldn't really tell at that point. And then my girlfriend, who I watched the movie with, thought it was a carrot. And I'm like, he's in a butcher shop. Why would he be eating a carrot in a butcher shop? I kind of wish he would, because it would have just been a weird thing,
it's
like
not
a
a Slim
weird
Jim.
character. It ends up being a meat stick, yes, like some
Okay.
sort of Slim Jim type thing. But I
Okay.
think it would have been better if it was a carrot, because it just would have made the character a little deeper into how far he's gone in like this crazy town. That he's gonna walk into a butcher shop eating a carrot.
Oh
But
man.
yeah, he has this conversation with this other dude that was responsible for it. This dude apparently has been out of the game also, and was done with everything, and now he just has this butcher shop.
But he's like, he feels the age just like Frank does. He's got arthritis issues, and
Yeah,
he works because he's alone, so he's got to have something to do. Like he clearly seems sad and run down. He feels guilty for everything. When he knows that Nick's there to kill him, he's not trying to stop it,
right.
right? He's not fighting back in any way. Clearly, a very different reaction to those events compared to the dragon.
Yeah, and he uh is eating this meat stick all the way up until the point of the casual murder. I did put this one as casual because it was planned, but like in the sense that the character, it didn't really feel like anything to the character. It was just like
Right.
another day in the neighborhood, like Mr.
Agreed.
Rogers. Um, yeah. So then when he goes to Q again, I think this is Q because he starts playing the piano.
Right. Fun fact, Nick learned how to play piano for this movie.
Yeah, and so he goes to Q and he tells him that he did this thing, and they have the conversation about it, and then the night is over again, and he goes back to his hotel room,
Mhm.
and his son is not there, if I remember correctly, at this point.
He starts freaking out,
Yeah, because he
looking
wants to
for him.
call he wants to call his son, but he can't figure out how, because he's been in jail for 20 years, doesn't know how to use a cell phone. So he sees a kid that works at the hotel down the hall, where he presumably met the escort the night before, or a couple nights before,
Hmm.
and asks the kid if he would show him how to call somebody on his phone, show him how to use his phone. So the kid comes over and starts like trying to help him figure out how to call his son. But like the number's been erased. He did show, when they were
Because
shopping at the mall or whatever, they did show him FaceTiming.
right,
But there was no history of that in the phone for some reason. Um, and so the kid gets ready to leave, and instead of letting the kid leave, Nick says they'll pay the kid $500 to make a list of all the nursing homes within like 50 miles or something,
whatever it
because
is, in the state, I think is what he said.
he knows this dude he
Uh,
wants is in a coma, and he's probably in a nursing home or some sort of care center. So he's trying to find that guy. And so the kid does it. And so I have whiskey cologne as the next note, because oh yeah,
well,
somebody knocks on the door, and he
because he
thinks
had,
that it's
well, he
oh, that's
made a
right,
date.
that's right,
He was supposed to have a follow-up date with Simone that he
right. And
forgot
so
about.
he hears a knock on the door, and so he thinks it's Simone, and so he goes and takes some whiskey and puts it on his hands and like dabs it on his neck like cologne, and goes and opens the door, and it's another lady that says her name is Simone, and you know she's just there to have a good time with him or whatever, but he doesn't want her. He wants the Simone he met a couple nights ago. And so he sends her away, and he's very rude about it. She's also pretty rude. They're rude to each other. um and so, like 5 minutes, the kid, keep in mind, the kid is still in here, like writing this stuff down
Yeah.
while this is going on. And so, after a few minutes after he sends her away, the pimp guy comes back to the door and starts to try and get him to pay, because now he's wasted their time and blah blah blah, and a
There's a
cancellation
cancellation
fee.
fee.
Yeah, and so he pulls a gun on Nick, and then Nick takes the gun away and like is holding a gun to his head while this kid is just sitting there doing the stuff for him. I mean, he's freaking out, obviously.
Hmm.
And so he keeps the guy's gun, which is like a nice engraved, pimp style 1911, something extra, over the top, like a lot of pimps in movies are portrayed to have, as far as guns and chalices go.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, then he keeps the gun and sends the guy out. And so I have my next note. I don't remember exactly what it was from, but at one point, Nick Cage goes, "Excellent." I don't know what it was in reference to, but that's what
I
my
don't
quote
remember
was.
either.
Like he
Yeah,
says like he says like excellent, not
he
excellent.
does.
And so
Yeah.
and he puts a lot of emphasis on it.
Yeah, why
So
did
that's
he
why.
do that? No, it was very
So you
specific.
remember that moment too? It wasn't just
I
me.
do.
Okay.
Why did he say that?
Was it
I
because of
can't.
the list of nursing homes or something?
It must have been, but I feel like food was involved though. I feel like he was thought he was making like a pun, and I can't
Yeah.
remember why. Was this after? Okay, so he does get a call eventually from Joey from his son.
No, this is before
This
that.
this is before that. Okay,
Yeah.
never mind. I don't remember why he said it
I don't
like that.
remember either, but it was a really weird line. But good on you, Nick. You're trying all these things all the time, and it worked, but probably not for this character. I mean, it was funny though,
Yeah,
maybe intentionally so. But yeah, so he gets this call from his son, and he ends up going to like this crack house type area.
yeah,
Like
that was dark.
it was like a rundown place where there's like a bunch of people doing drugs, and he finds his son in the corner on a mattress or whatever. He looks like he's OD'd, and he's doing really horrible CPR. I
Yeah,
mean,
like
really,
very violent.
yeah. I mean, it is not like calling it CPR is being generous. I mean, it's terrible. And so,
But it
yeah,
works.
my next note was amazing CPR technique.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and so
Ugh.
then he it works, and he and his son drive to a graveyard.
No, 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 not yet.
Yeah, they do,
He,
because
not yet.
this is where it's the big reveal happens.
No, because they bring him back to the hotel first,
Oh,
and he
okay.
nurses him back to health. Because like there's the
Oh,
scene
that's
where
right.
like he's in the tub and he brings. This is where I thought
I
the
guess I
excellent thing
didn't.
came in because he gets breakfast for his son in bed. I thought maybe that's when he said excellent, but
I
I
mean, that
guess
would be a
not.
good pun, but I don't think that's what it was.
Yeah. So there's this whole like he kind of is trying to get his son back on his feet, kind of thing.
Right.
So
I
you think
didn't make
maybe it's
any
going to take a
notes for that
turn.
because there wasn't
Yeah.
really anything interesting. It was just a montage of him like nursing his son back over an undisclosed amount of time.
I think the idea, at least for me, was that like it's maybe they will repair their relationship, right? And
Right.
maybe he will see, and he'll drop it, right, and
Yeah.
move on. But
So yeah,
no,
and he does get better. And they go to, like I was mentioning earlier, a graveyard, and then we get
or
our.
a cemetery, as some call it.
Is that not? I mean, I've always called them graveyards. I mean, yes, it's a cemetery, but is it not a graveyard?
I think it's only graveyards if it's a horror movie.
They're yards with graves in them, so I'm pretty sure it's still a
I'm
graveyard.
just messing with you.
Anyway, well, I didn't know if I've been like saying a thing wrong my whole life, and
Oh no, I think graveyard is just an older, like darker term. That's all.
maybe it's like a East Coast term where that's where my parents are from, and so maybe they carry that down here. I don't know. To me, but anyway, yeah, they go to this graveyard, where they you think they're visiting like his wife who's passed, but in reality they're visiting his son's grave who passed away, uh, at some point, and the twist is that he's been hallucinating his son this whole time.
He's been dead the whole time.
Did this
A
work for
long
you,
time.
this twist?
So at first, no. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized they actually did a pretty decent job with it. So he's been dead a long time. He died in 2005. So it's been 14 years, 15 years, since he's been dead. And, the more I think about it, like, he never drives the car. He never talks to another person. He only ever talks to his dad. He's the only person he's ever interacted with, right? He doesn't get a phone. The phone number from the FaceTime is not in Frank's phone. There are a lot of things like what he doesn't have a car to pick Frank up from the prison, which was weird, right? Frank's just walking by himself in the middle of the night. Like this is by the end of it, the more I thought about it, the more I realized they did street like post sign it really, really well. It just didn't occur to me that it was this kind of movie.
Yeah, I didn't think it really needed that twist. Like, I don't
I mean,
know.
I think it feeds into the syndrome that he has, that he's hallucinating this whole time, that he's just truly this broken down man
I mean, it
who
was already
is
a dark
lost.
ass movie. I mean,
Yeah.
I guess I just didn't need that extra layer of darkness put into it.
Well,
Um,
for it makes the motivation make a little more sense. Like he's out to kill these guys, but his son is like fine, right? Like yeah, he's had some drug issues, but he's alive. He's more or less healthy, right? Like they can still like have a life together, right? But no, he's been dead this whole time. Now that kind of makes more sense.
I
Um,
guess I don't know. I didn't really like that part. Yeah, I mean, they may have done a good job with it, but it still, seemed weird that like the did the cashier at the watch shop not think it was weird that he was putting the watch on a wrist of someone that wasn't there, or
well, I
like
guess we
the
don't really
store salesman,
know.
how did they get the sizes? You know what I mean? Like none of this seems weird to anybody.
No, I think it probably did. We don't really know what the real thing is that happened. We know what we saw in his mind, And so, like, I don't know. Like, I mean, it's not perfect by any stretch, but I think they did a decent job with
It's
it.
fine. I just didn't like
Um,
that.
by the way, in case anybody out there is curious, while graveyard and cemetery are typically used interchangeably, a graveyard specifically refers to burial grounds within a churchyard.
Yeah, I'll continue using them interchangeably. Um, so one thing we didn't mention is that when the I can't remember which person tells him, but when the whole confrontation with the other Simone and the pimp happens,
Mhm.
they mentioned that the first Simone didn't want to see him again because he scared her.
Yeah, that didn't make sense to me
Yeah. So
because
I'm
they,
guessing it was because he came on very strong, and you know but
I
that's
don't
the
know.
thing, is a lot of those sex workers are used to that kind of thing, like people getting attached. And so,
I don't know.
yeah,
It seemed weird because like they go on this, they have like a second date kind of thing or whatever. Not maybe a second date, but whatever. He drops her off at her home and he asks her out as like a real date, and she says no. And that's the end of it. He apologizes for it, and asks if he can, call her number or whatever. And that's how they leave it. I'm not saying that a person could not have been scared or felt uncomfortable, but she did not appear
right.
to perceive it that way in the movie. So I did not buy it for that character.
Well, he ends up my next note, I might have skipped around at some point, but my next note is that he seeks her out, and she's like pushing her what's presumably her son
Yeah,
in
it's her
a
son.
stroller. And he gives her a duffel bag that has $100,000 in it,
Mhm.
and says he's sorry if he scared her and blah blah blah. And
We
then,
find out that her son's name is Joey, the same as his son, which I
yeah,
thought was unnecessary.
very. But yeah, while he's talking to her, he's also hallucinating his wife again.
Hmm.
And he finds out. I mean, it isn't really shown how he finds out which nursing home this guy is at. I guess he just called a bunch of them. But he ends up going to this one nursing home and walking in with like, it was like it's the Terminator in the
It
carrying the
was.
box of roses,
It
but
was
he's got
great.
like a Christmas gift wrapped baseball bat essentially.
Uh,
And he's walking in there with like the super long baseball bat size box that's Christmas wrapped.
well, I guess this is
And
an old man who's been in a coma for like 15 years. So
yeah,
what? They're probably not concerned, you know.
except that he's only had one other visitor in 15 years.
Yeah,
But
I
nobody
don't know,
thinks it's
but
weird.
I don't
So
know.
he goes in, and he's he's planning on beating the head in of this guy with the baseball bat. I'm assuming that's what he was originally planning.
Yeah, that was the original plan.
But then he sees him and he's like, "Nah, I'm not going to do this." And
Well,
then
he
he,
didn't know Max was in a coma. Yeah, that's the big reveal is that
yeah,
Max did not really recover from the stroke. He had the stroke and has been in a coma ever since. And so the big reveal is that Max,
the next big reveal because there's
well,
already
right,
been
the
one.
next, I'm
Yeah,
sorry, yeah, the second big reveal, because there's really three. The second big reveal is that Max didn't like break his promise, right, and not take care of Joey. Max has been in a coma the entire time. He had nothing to do with it. And so Frank kind of realizes that it wasn't Max's fault that his son died. And that's
right,
when it leads to the climax of the film.
right. It's revealed um that that in fact Q was the one that was responsible for his son dying. And so it just so happens that his daughter's getting married soon, so he knows where to find him.
So
Um,
I guess this whole movie takes place over maybe 4 days total,
right,
5 days, 4 days.
other than the beginning part. Um,
Right, right, right.
so then he goes to leave the old folks home, and then there's like a big shootout because the dragon penis has found him, and they're shooting each other. And in traditional Nick Cage movie fashion, somebody gets shot in the ankle
I
while looking underneath the
know.
car.
I
What
mean, if
was
I
that?
had a nickel for every time that happened in a Nicolas Cage movie.
We'd have two nickels, which is it's just weird how often it's happened. It's not that
Exactly.
many, but yeah. And then after he shoots the guy in the ankle, apparently at this point, when you get shot in the ankle, you're completely incapacitated and can't do anything else, including using your hands, because the guy falls backwards and the gun does fall away, but then he just lays there
And
as
look,
Nick.
maybe that's what would happen if I got shot in the ankle because I haven't been around any type of violence like that. I haven't been shot before. I don't know what that feels like. This dude is a gangster,
Right.
right? Nick's been shot before. This guy's probably had some type of serious violent injury before. It's less believable when it happens to somebody like that.
Yeah, and that's where I struggled too. He's literally just laying on the ground like a turtle that just fell on its back and can't flip over. And so Nick Cage then shoots his dick off,
I do
which
want to
has
point out
also
that this
happened
is
multiple times in Nick Cage movies, I'm pretty
yes,
sure.
yes.
Um,
Does this like nursing home have zero
but no,
security?
yeah, like the police never show up. They're
Like you
just
hear sirens as he's leaving, but like there's not even like a security officer
right.
anywhere, like nothing.
Everybody just thinks it's okay, I guess. Yeah, so he shoots his dick off, and then I'm pretty sure he just killed him after that, right?
Yeah, he shot him in the head. Yeah,
Yeah, which he does.
which I
Um,
thought was an odd choice. I feel like shooting him in the dick. I think would have been like a good punishment. Just leave the guy alive with that. He's gonna, he's dying anyway.
right.
And Frank is anyway.
Well,
So
truly, if his dick is that big, then he's probably gonna bleed out. You know,
I don't. Yeah,
that stump would be losing a lot of blood, I'd imagine. Um, yeah, so he heads to the wedding chapel, where Q is presumably, getting ready to hand his daughter off.
and we see him talking to people like he's running for office or something. That
Yeah, it was
felt
really
very
weird, very
unnecessary.
forced. They
Yeah.
were just gonna get their full Benjamin Bratt, you know, money. They're gonna get their money's worth.
Right. They hired him and they set up this beautiful church. They're gonna use it.
Right, exactly. And this was the beef moment, right? When he says like we've got beef or
Oh
whatever, and Nick
yeah.
goes off about the whole beef thing.
Beef.
Yeah, we get like a whole beef rant, and Nick goes. This is the cagiest part of the movie, probably. He just like loses it. And
It's
they're
up there.
talking. Yeah, and so he initially has the daughter at gunpoint, of course. You see like a bunch of the like bridesmaids or whatever running out of the room, and of course Benjamin Bratt needs to go check what's happening. And so he goes in, and Nick Cage tells his daughter to leave, and his daughter does not leave. He just like hangs out. And so they hash this out, and he somehow Nick Cage hallucinates the exact circumstances that happened to his son, that got him killed.
Yeah. I wasn't sure if like was Benjamin telling him and we're experiencing the story as Frank imagines it, or is this a hallucination? That was unclear to me.
Right. It was well, I mean, knowing what we know about his condition, I assumed it was a hallucination, but it just seemed weird that he was hallucinating the exact circumstances.
Yeah.
But
When
maybe it was
he's
a little bit
falling
of
apart at
both.
this point,
Yeah,
like
he's
he can
gone.
barely stand. He does shoot Q in the leg, in the
Right.
thigh. But yeah, like he's just dizzy and spinning out at this point, can barely
Right.
hold the gun.
And eventually, he decides not to kill Q in front of his daughter or kill him at all, I guess. And he ends up everybody's evacuated out of the church at this point.
Well, Q explains why. And it was that Joey, yes, he had all these drug problems, but he started to threaten the gang members and say if they didn't give him money, he was going to go to the cops.
Right. And so he had to kill him. And he said, like, you would have done the same thing in my position, you know, stuff like that. And so Frankie agrees, I guess, in that circumstance and ends up walking out. And as he's walking out, the daughter shoots him in the back with the Uzi, right? Or
Yeah,
the submachine gun. But
whatever
she
the
only
yeah,
shoots him once.
which
One bullet in the back.
yeah,
It doesn't kill him. It just kind of annoys him.
it's like he barely noticed. It
Yeah.
was like she threw an eraser at him.
It's like that Con Air scene where he's just running at Cyrus the Virus and he gets shot in the arm and it doesn't like the physics do not agree in this moment and he just keeps pushing forward with no reaction at all.
That's a
It was
great
like
way of
that.
describing it.
Um, so yeah, he shoots her or she shoots him and he looks back and he like just keeps walking and he
Mhm.
walks out basically commits suicide by cop.
But of course,
Um,
like so he does have a gun,
yeah,
right? And but he's not going for the gun. He's going for the baseball card from
right.
earlier in the movie.
Yeah, and it's covered in blood, and you get a slow scene of his death, and he has the conversation with his son at the end,
Yeah,
and it was not nearly as meaningful as it probably was meant to be. It was just a thing that happened.
it's just depressing.
And then yeah, Nick dies at the end as another square in our bingo card because it happens so often. So yeah, that's it. That's the movie.
That's the movie.
I feel like we talked about it way more than it deserved, but that's what we do here.
It leaves a lot of questions open to me. Like, for example, if Q was hiding all of this from Frank this whole time, why would he risk his daughter and things like that by explaining where and when this wedding was going to be? That's number one. That's a question I have.
Right. Yeah, that's a reasonable question.
You know, um, question number two. So now Q's been shot. He's bleeding pretty bad. We get to see it. I don't know that he's necessarily bleeding out, but he's hurt. He
Yeah.
needs medical attention. Is it never going to get brought up? Hey, why did this guy shoot you? Right. So does Q end up in jail or something for like all these gangster crimes?
Who knows? He had somebody else take the fall for him, probably.
But there's nobody left. Dragon's dead.
That's
Tank's
true.
dead. Max in a coma. I don't know. I mean, and then I guess that's just kind of it. And Simone Jennifer gets $100,000 and rides off into the sunset. I don't know. It's a very strange movie.
Yeah. But in my opinion, very like media, like right in the middle of all these Nick Cage movies we watch. It's going to be another one in the center of um, in the center of our graph, but probably a little bit higher on the cagey side.
Well, let's talk about that, shall we?
Sure.
So of course we grade our Nicolas Cage movies on a scale of 1 to 20, 1 low, 20 high, overall quality and overall caginess. So Ryan, you're saying this is kind of middle of the road from a quality standpoint. Where would you grade it? Where are you going to put a score to settle?
I mean, probably like a 10, like right in the middle.
Really?
Yeah, maybe a
Quality.
9.
Wow.
I mean, it wasn't terrible. We watched some really bad ones.
We have. I wasn't going to give it like a 2 or anything. I was thinking
Like,
like a 7.
but see, like the twist, like I didn't like it, but it did work. This had more thought put into it, I think, than some of the other movies that I think were around a 7. Um,
Well,
so
let's see. I mean, I gave Next a 7.
yeah,
And
which had
I
a lot
mean,
of problems.
it did. It did. Gave, let's see, Bad Lieutenant, I gave an 8.
Yeah, which a lot of people would fight you over, but
I mean, you gave it an 8.
I know I agree with you. But I'm saying that a lot of people really like that movie, and it is
Well,
very cagey.
Yeah, Port of Call, New Orleans. This isn't the original Bad Lieutenant. I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm being too harsh then.
I'll go with a 9 because I mean you're not wrong. It wasn't good, but
All right, you're gonna give it a
it
nine.
was
I mean,
on the bad side of average. I'll say that.
I mean, I mean, I gave the Humanity Bureau a nine.
This was, I would say, fairly equal to the Humanity Bureau. I feel good about where I put it. I mean, if you don't, then that's fine. You can.
I'm gonna give it an eight
Okay,
because
totally reasonable.
yeah, I'm gonna give it an eight. Now we have overall caginess, and there are definitely some cagey moments. There's, the donuts in the car. There's the beef scene, right? There's definitely some cagey
All
moments.
of his like insomnia breakdowns.
They're all pretty good. Yeah, the bathroom scene at the bar. So there's certainly some of it. It's not like a ton, and so I hesitate to go too high
Oh, I
on
wouldn't go like
that.
a 20 or anything, but I mean, I would. It's more than average, I would say.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember some of these. I'm thinking like maybe a 12.
Yeah, I think a 12 is perfectly reasonable. 12, 13, somewhere in there. Because it is more cagey than the average movie, but there are just a few short. It wasn't consistently cagey.
Okay. So a 12 on caginess and an 8.5 on overall quality
Yeah.
for it. Okay. Well, that's cool.
Okay.
Um,
Well, what we've
and
been
then
doing recently,
oh
I want
yeah.
to. I've been looking up some good and bad reviews for the movies. So, this has been a long one already. So I'll just go ahead and I just want to hit a few highlights. Some of the 10 out of tens. Uh, Cannot for the life of me understand the bad reviews. Emotional roller coaster with Cage doing the driving and his usual dry wit and fabulous acting. Great cast, great acting, nice story, and a great twist. Don't agree with you, Giorgio, 264 490, but I appreciate that you liked it. Yeah, here's one. The title is excellent. Great movie. The sound was incredible. Also, the acting, which I hated the sound,
The
and the acting for the
sound?
most part. Yeah.
Interesting.
Um, Here's one from Michaelis Pagalatos. As always, great performance by Cage. The plot might seem typical, but his presence alone makes this movie great. I would love to see this movie in a theater. Recommended to all Cage fans. It's a must see.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a pretty strong one. On Amazon, we have Long but a really good movie from Sarah B. That was a 5-star review. Uh, Brooklyn Phantom says it's an excellent drama. Cage is great in this. This film had my attention the whole time. Sad film, but Cage's performance is layered. He slowly unravels. The direction and script are very good. Highly recommend.
Hmm.
Uh, Kelly Kimmel says quintessentially Nick, the king of camp, is back and better than ever in this action-packed psychological thriller. You could say it was excellent. If you love Nick Cage and campy movies, this is a true classic of the genre. Many laughs and awful one-liners. Enjoy. So those are some like 10 out of 10s and 5 stars. For some 1 stars, one Gummy Bear on Amazon says 1 star, dumb, worst movie ever.
That's such an
Uh,
exaggeration.
Gems 2 online said, "Oh man, not his best work. Okay, I expected more from Mr. Cage. This was downright boring, non-action movie I've ever seen. The trailer is the movie, so just watch the trailer and save your money." Um, 1 star from a random Amazon customer. I didn't think I wanted to watch Nicolas Cage mope around for an entire movie, but it turns out I was right. I don't know. That doesn't really make sense, but hey,
I think they were
um,
trying to be clever.
I think they were. It didn't work for him. Here's one on IMDb from Winbert. A-star plus B- movie equals C- happiness. Supposedly this movie is starred by Frank Zagarino. You will be straightforward saying this is a bad B- movie, but this is Mr. Cage in it. You might be hoping an A- class show, but no matter. Nicolas Cage is in there. The film remains super bad. The story is so cliche. This type of script has thousands of times been made by Hong Kong martial arts movies, i.e., a story of the so-called revenge. That was a tough one to get through. Um, 1 out of 10, 1.42 hours of my life I'll never be getting back. I don't think that's how math works. I think it was 1 hour and 42 minutes, not 1.42 hours, but
They probably meant colon and just hit the wrong
probably.
punctuation.
Nicholas, here's 1 star from PSX Expertin. Nicholas Cage's worst acting so far.
Wow.
One of the worst movies I've seen in a long time. I won't waste many words on this review, as the poor production, camera work, sound, and acting in this film does not warrant it. Why Nick keep on playing this Bollywood junk movies is a mystery. He should quit his movie career years ago while he still had some talent left.
That's harsh, man.
One of the worst movies I've ever saw. I think Cage owns someone a lot in order to be part of this serious shit.
Okay.
The Corvette was the best part. Seriously, the Corvette Grand Sport was the best part. Absolutely terrible acting combined with horrible dialogue make this one of the worst films I've ever seen. Okay.
I think people may have been spoiled and don't know what a bad movie looks like.
I'm just going to give you this last one to end this
Okay,
on.
one more. Here we go.
This is from Darms 87466. Instead of watching this movie, do the following. 1. Look through an empty paper towel tube. The cinematography is like nothing I've ever seen and never want to see again. 2. Scream Joey 10,000 times. There has to be some kind of subliminal connection here. Maybe the director's lover is named Joey, but it's said so many times in the movie, you'd be sick of the name in less than 45 minutes. 3. The actor who plays Joey is simply terrible. Ever watch Back to School? Remember the Jewish actor that played Jason? His acting was as bad as the actor in this movie who plays Joey. I don't know if the fact that the actor's Jewish has anything to do with it, but
That's a walk. Yeah, I don't know.
4. Wu isn't a director. I'm not in Hollywood, but I would bet money that Wu had funding from China to make this movie. It's likely his parents are simply rich and backed their child to make this movie. They've only embarrassed themselves, their son in Hollywood. 5. Cage must have been hard up for money. This movie was horrible, and I'm glad it was free through Hulu and I didn't waste 99 cents to watch it. 6. This movie sucked. That's pretty harsh, and there's a lot of like weird, potentially anti-Semitic or racist things in there.
Yeah,
But
I rented it. I paid $3.99 to watch this on
you regret
Amazon.
that?
So no, I don't. It was fine. I mean, like we've seen far worse.
Yeah, sure.
Not I mean across the board, whether it was a Nick Cage movie or not. I've seen far worse movies. It was fine. It was a
Yeah,
fine movie.
yeah.
I
Agreed. I mean, it was very average in terms of Nick
right.
Cage movies. Most of these people that are reviewing this movie saying this is the worst movie ever have not watched 50 of Nick Cage's movies.
I don't know that they've watched many
And
movies.
just in general, yeah. They
I
picked it up
mean,
from like the 99-cent bin at Walmart and saw Nick Cage's name on it and hoped
right?
for the
Like
best.
if this is the worst movie ever, what's like Beer Fest and Scary Movie 2? Like,
Zondervan.
you know, just throwing those out there.
Yeah.
But all right. Well, we now have to so we have our Wheel O Cage. We have to find a movie now that replaces A Score to Settle and joins the wheel. So joining the wheel will be Butcher's Crossing,
Oh,
which
okay.
is one of his newer films. So that's going to join the wheel to find out which Nicolas Cage movie we're going to talk about next time on the show. Check out our Wheel O Cage spin. Go to comingofcage.com. Follow us at Coming of Cage or subscribe to the Derrico Studios YouTube channel. And
So
that's
now
where you can.
we have several movies now that were made since we started this podcast on the wheel. So
We
eventually
do.
we'll hit
Yeah.
one of them, you know.
That's right. Yeah. It's pretty cool, actually. We got several on the wheel now that are relatively new.
Renfield, Butcher's Crossing. I think that's
Renfield, yeah, they're both on there. We also let's see. Those are kind of the newest ones, but
we've
there's
been doing this for what, 2 years now, and so both those movies are
almost.
in the 2 year range for us.
So our next episode will be episode 50, and that will actually be our 2-year anniversary episode, which is pretty
Yes.
cool at the same time. And you'll have to see what our 50th Nicolas Cage movie will be.
Or maybe we'll do a recap episode. Who knows? We haven't really talked about it, but
I have
we'll
some
see what happens.
thoughts. We'll talk about it.
Yeah, be surprised
offline,
whenever our next episode comes out.
But either way, subscribe to us, the Coming of Cage podcast, on your podcast app of choice. Or you can watch our show and see us in all of our digital glory on the Derrico Studios YouTube channel. Go to comingofcage.com for all of our links, or search for Coming of Cage on whatever search engine you use, because, that's an option. Ryan, anything else for A Score to Settle?
No, I think I'm good.
All right. Well, we are the Coming of Cage podcast. I'm Derek. That's Ryan.
Hey.